Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's live online author event with Greenlight Bookstore. I'm Katie from Greenlight, and we're thrilled to host tonight's event with Dawnie Walton, presenting her new book, The Final Revival of Opal and Nev. She will be talking with Kiley Reid, so you're in for an excellent time. Before we start, I just want to say a huge thanks to Dawnie, Kiley, and the team at 37 Inc. for making this happen, and to all of you for showing up. Though we're not able to host events in our store spaces, our community of authors and readers is still here. We're grateful for your support and for the chance to make space for conversation and connection. There's just a few housekeeping things to go over before we get started. In our Zoom webinar tonight, you can see and hear the speakers, but they can't see or hear you. They can see that you're here though, and you can see a count of fellow attendees on the top of your Zoom screen, but the exact location will depend on what kind of device you're using. There are a couple of different ways you can interact with the authors and with each other throughout tonight's event, which we highly encourage. The first is the chat, which you can find by clicking on the icon that looks like one speech balloon. You're welcome to post your comments and thoughts in the chat. It's a great way to show your appreciation for the author and to interact with fellow attendees. So if you have a specific question you'd like to have answered by the author, please post that question in the Q&A module. You can find it by clicking on the icon that looks like two speech balloons. We'll be pulling questions only from the Q&A to be answered in the later part of the program, so please make sure you're putting them there and not in the chat. And importantly, tonight's featured book, The Final Revival of Opal and Nev, is available for sale from Greenlight Bookstore. You can shop in person in our bookstore locations, 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. every day of the week, and you can purchase Dawnie's book and many others on site. Or order online at greenlightbookstore.com for a quick pickup in the store or for shipping anywhere in the US. I'll be dropping the buy link in the chat in just a moment. If you care about supporting the careers of authors and the ongoing existence of independent bookstores, buying tonight's featured book is a great way to show your support. Our interviewer tonight is Kiley Reid. She is a recent graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop, where she was the recipient of the Truman Capote Fellowship. Her New York Times bestselling debut novel, Such a Fun Age, is currently in development by Lena Waithe's Hillman Grad Productions and Sight Unseen Pictures. The novel was longlisted for the 2020 Booker Prize and a finalist for the New York Public Library's 2020 Young Lions Fiction Award, the NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Literary Work by a Debut Author, and the Mark Twain American Voice in Literature Award. Kiley's writing has been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Playboy, December, and Plowshares. Kiley lives in Philadelphia and currently teaches at Temple University's MFA program. She will be speaking with our featured author, Dawnie Walton. Dawnie is a fiction writer and journalist whose work explores identity, place, and the influence of pop culture. She has won fellowships from MacDowell and the Tin House Summer Workshop and earned her MFA from the Iowa Writers Workshop. Previously, she worked as an executive level editor for magazine and multimedia brands, including Essence, Entertainment Weekly, Getty Images, and Life. A native of Jacksonville, Florida, she lives with her husband in Brooklyn. Her new book, The Final Revival of Opal and Nev, is an electrifying novel about the meteoric rise of an iconic 1970s rock duo, their sensational breakup, and the dark secrets unearthed when they try to reunite for one last tour. This debut has been praised by acclaimed authors such as Jason Reynolds, Ta-Nehisi Coates, Ayanna Mathis, and interviewer Kiley Reid, who says, "The Final Revival of Opal and Nev is lovely and lyrical, a warm and wonderful intersection between journalism and fiction. This is a novel you'll want to read out loud. It's made for readers and music lovers who find themselves wishing that Behind the Music was still on the air." Dawnie is going to start us off with a reading from the book, and then she'll be talking with Kiley and with all of you. Please take it away, Dawnie.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I'm so excited. Thank you to Greenlight for hosting and to Kiley, my Iowa family, for joining me tonight. As our host said, The Final Revival of Opal and Nev is the story of an unconventional duo, a Black American woman and a white Englishman who make weird rock and roll together in the early 1970s. On the New York scene and rocket to the spotlight following the violent fallout from a promotional concert. I'm going to read tonight from chapter 6, which is a scene where Nev and his Rivington Records label owner, Howie Kelly, a label that's very struggling, are on a hunt for a musical partner to complement Nev. And in Detroit, they discover in an amateur sister act, the woman who will change their fortunes. And please be patient with me. This is the first time I've really read trying to do voices. So
wow, girl, you got it.
Yeah, here we go. Opal Jewel. Pearl was sanctified, but I take credit for bringing out the devil in her. She was in church every Sunday, singing it up to Jesus. But on Saturday nights, I'd twist her arm to come out with me to this joint called the Gemini. I'd play on her guilt by telling her I was going with or without her. And didn't she want to keep her only sister out of trouble? Worked every time, mostly because deep down, I think she wanted it to work. But Sister Pearl would never admit that. The Gemini had an open mic hour with a live backing band, and that's how we got on. Pearl would refuse to sing anything fun. For some reason, she hated the word baby. She thought it was too worldly or some nonsense. So that knocked out a lot of the Motown hits right there. And honey, this was 1969, 1970 Detroit. I was trying to meet Mr. Berry Gordy. It was very reasonable that one day he would walk into the Gemini looking for his next starlets, and we're up there singing Christmas carols. But I always meant for it to be Pearl. I really did. She had the voice. I was just the backup. What I brought to it was the style. I tried to make her stand out, tried to teach her to sway a little with the beat, and I did her outfits. Mine was always the shorter, tighter, lower cut version of hers. Even though, to tell you the truth, Pearl had a lot more to work with, if you know what I'm saying. Howie Kelly. Christ, that one had a rack. You didn't know whether you were hypnotized by the voice or the tits. Pearl Wellmont. During the time we were singing at the Gemini, I was still in touch with Lawrence back in Alabama, and we had already promised ourselves to each other. I had no interest in getting ogled by the men in that filthy place. Most of them were married anyway, but I was working and saving money till it seemed right to move to Birmingham for good. And to be honest, I was also trying to keep Opal out of trouble. And by trouble, that's exactly the kind of trouble I mean. You would not believe how many of our old classmates, the girls from Mrs. Dennis's apartment, ended up in that situation with no husband. Opal never did have any friends, and she looked more mature than she was. Without me to look out for her, she might have been susceptible to a certain kind of wicked attention. That sinning lifestyle can be seductive. So I tried to keep up with her as much as she'd let me. And if that meant wearing those outfits she made for Saturday nights, well, I'd humor it, long as I was covered enough. Nev Charles. Howie and I was sitting at a table right in front. It wasn't a big place, and every other inconspicuous spot was taken. We sat through a couple of ho-hum acts, a guy struggling his way through Sam and Dave, and then the bassist and the drummer kicked in with To Sell With Love, of all songs, and the Robinson Girls came out. Howie Kelly. The Coca-Cola bottle and the straw. Opal Jewel. That night, Pearl and I were wearing crushed velvet, gold crushed velvet, or maybe velour, honey, I don't know, whichever one of those is the cheaper fabric. I'd made Pearl a jumpsuit out of it with a top that I tried to keep fitted so that people could see she had something. And out of the same material, I'd cut myself a halter and shorts. And I took a brass chain from an old pocket watch I found at the Goodwill, and I shined it up nice and wrapped it around my skinny little waist like a belt, trying to create some kind of effect. Now, To Serve With Love is mid-tempo, but me being me, I'd still find a way to shake it, so that right on beat, that chain would jingle like mad, as Nev would say. Howie Kelly. She had this deep ebony skin, so any colors looked dramatic on her. I'll give her that. And it was like music every time she moved. You just wanted to stick a tambourine in her hand and watch her go. Opal Jewel. For years, Pearl had adored To Sir With Love. I mean, everybody was crazy about the movie because Sidney Poitier was so damn fine, and the sentiment of it was very sweet and chaste. But don't let the sweetness fool you. That's a belter song, a big chance to show out, and Pearl used to beat it dead. You remember, though, that on the original track, Lulu doesn't have any backing vocals, so I had to make up my own part, get in where I fit in. And when I listened to that record, I realized that a big part of it, what gave it emotion and light and air, was the strings. At the Gemini, there was obviously nobody with a damn violin in the house band. I figured, well, then that's my part. I'm the strings. Pearl would go loud and broad, just like Lulu, and I'd fill in high above her, floating real soft and pretty, like painting those letters in the sky. Nev Charles. It's really a sappy tune, but by the chorus I was riveted. My God. And the thing besides her singing that I remember the most was her hair. It was blue, black, and shiny and obviously fake, and it fell down to her midriff. She was very energetic and moved a lot, and it would sort of shift around on her head. Opal Jewel studying an old family photo. Woo, child. Those early days of me in the wigs looking like a vinyl record had melted on top of my head. Nev Charles. I remember watching her, absolutely gobsmacked, and thinking how mysterious and scrappy she was. This girl in the gold shorts and the bad wig making up her own part. This girl with the voice that flew over and through and around her sister so strangely. Howie Kelly. At the end of it, I go through the whole rigmarole with Nev, me asking him, did you like her? This time his voice looked different though, all lit up and excited. He didn't have to say a word. I was already gesturing toward the Coke bottle when Nev slapped my hand down and pointed to the straw. Thank you.
So, like,
how did that go? Was that okay?
I know you have like an MFA. Do you have a BFA too? Like, you did a really good job.
I practiced a little bit.
It was really, really wonderful. And I have said this from the beginning, it's how I think this book is meant to be read, because it is so lyrical and conversational and yet nuanced. And congratulations, happy Pub Day. It's here. How does it feel to have this out in the world?
Well, it's such a long process, right? Like, and I started writing this book way back in 2013. So it's like the journey has been so long, but then it's like you wait, and then it's like everything in a rush. And so today was like super intense and like amazing, and hearing from all my loved ones and family and strangers on the internet who have the book and are reading it, which is a whole other experience. But it's been really, really wonderful to know that these characters I've heard in my head for so long, like people are really connecting with them and loving them too.
Yes, of course too. I wish we were doing this in person, but there is something about the musicality of this piece. I know certain times during the pandemic when certain artists, like even Taylor Swift, when she came out with an album, I was like, download immediately, because you want something new for this period. And so now Lovers of Music have this book and this world of music as well. And so I'm so excited to dive into it with you tonight. I want to start on the outside and work our way in, because this is beautiful.
Thank you. This is a design by Dave Littman, who is a designer illustrator for Simon & Schuster. And this cover was a riff on the very first design that he sent, which I hear is very rare.
Very rare.
To, like, nail it like so early. But there were some other things earlier. The typography was always the same, but there were some different things going on with the guitar.
It's very, very beautiful. So it sounds like it was love at first sight a little bit, and then there was just a little bit of shifting.
There was some shifting, yeah, but it was like almost right away. It was like, ooh, yeah.
About music. Okay, you gave us a really nice synopsis of what's going on in this story, but let's pretend like you're in an elevator and I'm outside.
Oh, the elevator pitch.
And the doors are shutting. And I'm like, Dawnie, what's your book about? And you have like 2 seconds. What do you tell me?
Okay. And I'm gonna thank Mary Sue Rucci for a second for helping me to get this down. Okay, so the final revival of Opal and Nev is the story about the rise of a rock and roll duo in the early 1970s New York, their fall, and the dark secret that comes to light as they consider reuniting for a 2016 tour.
That is really very, very well done. Very nice. If I hear rise, fall, and dark secret, I'm like, charge it. So like that every single time. I had a chat with a friend the other day and we were talking about novels, and she asked me this, and I think it's a really great question. What was the first spark in your mind of this story? Even if that spark didn't make it into the book, what was the very first little hint that this might be the story you want to tell?
So this was back in 2013. I was watching the documentary 20 Feet from Stardom, which is a great Oscar-winning film about background singers and about how they had sort of been like overlooked and never had a shot at fame. And in the first 5 minutes of that film, they show concert footage from Stop Making Sense, which is a 1984 Talking Heads concert film. And, you see David Byrne, who I love, is at center stage, and he's doing his quirky dancing that I remember from the Talking Heads videos, and then like to his left, you see his background singers, two Black women whose names I would later learn are Lynn Mabry and Edna Holt. And they were so joyful and so committed to this like crazy, weird music. And they were beautiful and dynamic, and I could not take my eyes off of them. And I had the feeling, it's such a strange urge to put my hand in the screen and literally pull one of them to center stage with David Byrne. And that was an image that I could not get out of my head for like weeks, thinking about what if two people like this were the stars, like together, not one leading the other or one backing the other. If they were together in the spotlight in this era of New York that I've always been obsessed with, the early 1970s, just before CBGB. What would that look like? What would have to happen to bring them together, and how long could it possibly last? Right. And I just started riffing from there. Like I started hearing Opal's voice first, and then Nev came in, and then all these other characters.
You really hooked into so many other people who affect their lives so much. And I also really love that you say that, because documentaries in particular really inspire my writing. And I wish there was more of a conversation about, the things that we see on TV, we end up writing about, especially when they're real people. But I do want to get back to the people, because we have to talk about the way the story is told, and we have to talk about process a little bit. Sure. Because you're juggling so many voices here to tell this really coherent story. Talk to me about process. Did you lay everything out? Did you, just go off and organize it later? Tell me what that looked like.
Gosh, this was probably not very smart of me, but I did not lay it out. I just kind of like, I let the characters kind of just talk, for the first like few chapters. I was just like writing things down without any idea of where it was going. And what would happen is like I'd write several pages and then I would get stuck, and then I would go to a cafe, or I remember once I went to the beach and I told myself, I'm not coming off of this beach and heading back to the city until I figure out what happens next. Probably like not very wise in the end, because like there were parts where I was super stuck, like at the end of part 1 of the book, like halfway in the book. I was at Iowa, and I sort of like, I took a full semester off so I could figure out what happened next. But in a way, like in terms of my excitement about where it was going, like it was very thrilling to kind of work by the seat of my pants.
Right.
And just to kind of like let the characters do what they wanted to do, and kind of worry about, like how things resolve later.
That is kind of the magic part when you are actually doing it, is when you don't have a plan. Like I am such a planner and I like to write everything down, but the magic really does happen when you're just like, well, what if these people were in a room? Like, let's just
Right. Yeah. And I think, Zadie Smith has a great essay where she talks about like it's an analogy about house building. And there's like two kinds of writers. There's like the one who plans, like draws up all the plans for the whole house before they start anything. And then there's the one that's like meticulously like in the kitchen, like putting the backsplash on, and they can't move on to the next room until like the kitchen is done. And I'm definitely like that latter part.
Interesting. We should build a house together, because I'll do the print, and then you can just like make sure every room is perfect. This is good.
And that is an HGTV show I would watch.
Yes, exactly. Yes, two writers building a house. They all like don't work. It'd be great. Yes. So, how much of this novel did you take to Iowa? Where was it when we were at school?
Yeah, so I had probably written maybe like 2/3 of a draft when I went into Iowa, and my very first workshop was with Sugi Ganeshananthan, and it was a great intimate, there were only 8 of us in it. And at that time, it was only the straight oral histories. There was no Sunny character. So Sunny is sort of the narrator, the journalist who's putting together all the stories. And my classmates very smartly said, we think this is really great. It feels exciting. It feels cool, but we're very curious about who they're talking to. Who is it that they're giving these stories to? And so that's when sort of like I went backwards to create Sunny and sort of like rewrote some of those parts. So honestly, like probably I only had about like half of it when I went into Iowa because I had to go backwards and then finish by graduation, which was the deadline that I gave myself.
I love that a lot because listen, I'm not going to get into the MFA conversation, but like that is what grad school is for a lot of the time, is your classmates being like, but what is this? What are we doing with this piece? And I love that they brought that to you. And I know that there's a lot of our mutual friends in the chat right now.
Hey, everybody.
Also, I could talk to you all night, but just everyone, you should know, if you have questions for Dawnie, please put them in the Q&A and I will get to them in a little bit. But let's get back to the story at Iowa. I also feel like there were a lot of music lovers at Iowa too. And there's a lot of people who love that history and a lot of people who love journalism. And I'm also curious about how you brought your journalism into this piece, or maybe left some out of it. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I'm often asked, was the book always an oral history? And the answer is yes. And it's because it's always a form that I loved when I was an editor, especially at Entertainment Weekly. That magazine often does a lot of oral histories, and it's a good way to sort of tell the story of something that's iconic or big and beloved. And it was always fascinating to me, especially when thinking of entertainment. Like, celebrities are very colorful, they're very loud, they're very like outrageous, and so these oral histories would be full of so much juice and humor. And I love the way that the voices would weave together and how memories would complement each other, but also contradict. That was also sort of the joy.
Yeah.
And in that sense, it's like the reader is also sort of like writing the story, because they're reading between the lines and like figuring out what they believe to be the way something came together or who they're siding with. It was always like a super dynamic form. And I think that's often surprising to people because they feel like it's a very rigid form. But I think in a way, the rigidity of it allowed me to be wild inside those lines. And it felt really freeing,
I totally agree with that, especially because it's so conversational. I feel, and I talk to my students about this all the time, that as soon as you start your novel, you are telling your reader how to read the book. And so the fact that people speak the way that they do in real life and you can understand those cadences, I don't feel like it's limiting at all. And you kind of start, when someone says something, you're like, oh, that's so Opal, she would say that. But these characters a little bit more. Yeah.
And that was my goal, was, I wanted the reader to be able to just like open the page and like plop their finger down on a passage and understand who was talking, just, because the voices, I tried to make them very distinct and memorable.
Did any of the characters change a little bit as you started writing it? Did any of them show you like, hey, I'm actually like a little not like that? Yeah.
Nev was the one who changed the most.
Interesting. In what way?
Yeah. I think that so I knew that this would be a duo that has a moment and then they sort of break apart, right? And then I wasn't sure like how they would fare solo, each of them. And when I started like thinking of sort of, Opal, her career sort of not doing so great, but Nev soaring, when I was really kind of leaning into like some of the things about like very huge celebrity, I was thinking about there's a certain practiced way, I think, that people present themselves, and I think like sometimes it's by necessity because they do so many interviews and like they want to stick to talking points, Right. So I was thinking about things like that. And then I was also thinking about musicians who are called chameleonic, some artists like have the privilege to like change, and like the audience or the record labels will like change with them and support them, and some don't. And so I was thinking about what it would mean for someone to, you know, try to switch things up all the time based on like whatever was on vogue, you know? And so like, I think in thinking about those things, Nev's personality began to sort of morph a little bit for me.
That's interesting. I also really, that's something that stuck out to me a lot while reading it. I couldn't help but think of those very famous couples in music, like Sonny and Cher. Of course, I watched The Newlyweds with Jessica Simpson.
Yes. Her memoir is so good, by the way.
So it's on my shelf. It is so good. Yes, I'm really glad you agree. But I remember, like, you hear these things secondhand, like fourth hand, because it's from media, and you think, oh, they broke up because that one got big and that one didn't. And that's never how anything is. But in this story, there's so much more underneath that, but kind of highlights your first point about when you see backup dancers and you're like, well, wait, why isn't she over there? And there's,
oh my gosh, I know. And there's so many, you know, particularly Black women in the music industry, Black women in rock and roll, you know, of course, like Tina Turner is sort of like the superstar that is sort of the standard bearer for that. But there's so many women who were either marginalized or erased, you know. And I actually did a series about this on my Instagram, about Black women in rock and sort of the hidden figures who contributed so much. You know, I write a little bit in this book about Gimme Shelter, the Rolling Stones song, which is iconic because of Mary Clayton's performance, you know. And the fact that Mary Clayton did not see any, you know, she put out a solo album and it just, you know, people were like, for whatever reason, it didn't fly. Well, you know, was it supported? Like, I mean, she's an incredible entertainer, incredible singer. And, you know, she's basically, she's Mick Jagger's duet partner, and then she takes the song away, you know? And the fact that people, you know, don't know her name is like enraging to me. But, and it's, yeah.
It's like, because then you see other people getting credited for referencing the thing that they're copying that she did in the first place, and it's just infuriating.
Yeah, and also it's a way that like Black women are sort of, you know, labeled in the industry. It's like the industry, the labels, like they have to know what to call you, you know. So if you're not like a pure like soul singer, then they're like, what is this? Like, what are you doing? You know, so there's a figure, Betty Davis was a hugely influential singer for me when thinking about Opal Jewel, who was a 1970s sort of cult funk rock star. And she ended up just leaving the business altogether and going back to her hometown of Pittsburgh. She was just done because she was tired of being told how to change,
Right.
you know?
Imagine how done you have to be, that talented. Like it must be even worse than you could have ever.
Oh my gosh.
So
Yeah.
I cannot imagine. Did you happen to listen to music while you were writing it, or was it all silent for you?
So when I'm writing, I need total silence. But when I was washing dishes or doing things around the house, other things, I would definitely listen to music for sure.
Did it inform how they sounded? Was it speaking to you while you were writing this book?
Yeah. I definitely was like thinking about the music. I was also thinking about presentation and style, you know? So I was thinking about figures like Grace Jones, you know, who is very rock and roll in her presentation and style, even though her music is actually like more dance, pop, club, really fun music. So it was like all these influences. It was looking at like photography, you know, all of that I felt like was research.
Very nice. So we had very different experiences at Iowa, because I just read your acknowledgements right now. You studied with all women. I studied with all men.
Wow.
Crazy. And it's like, you have such a different, like, interesting experience. I'm so curious what you took from Iowa, because there's a few professors who, you know, even though I haven't talked to them, I still hear their voices in my head when I'm writing sometimes in a really great way. And I would love to know whose voices you hear and what they're telling you when you're writing.
Oh my gosh. You know, all four of the women that I worked with at Iowa, they each had very specific impact on this book. So Sugi really sort of encouraged me to like lean into the unknown, and the unknown at that time was Sunny, and to complicate the narrative, you know? So when I think about like making things feel richer and deeper, I'm thinking about Sugi, you know? With Amber Dermont, she was just like, go wild, like be wilder, like be crazier. And so like she lets me sort of like have, you know, no inhibitions. Ayanna Mathis was my thesis advisor, and her workshop, and I think Eliana and some other folks from that workshop are in here. That semester, that workshop was like 90% women of color.
Okay, I need to tell you something about this. I know about that because our mutual friend, Jade, wonderful writer and person and friend, I came to Iowa and I met with her. And I was like, are there other Black people here? Like, I just want to make sure. And she was like, oh yeah, like, let me show you a picture of my workshop.
Yes.
A picture. And I was just like, oh my God, I can't wait. This is going to be so amazing. And then I walk into workshop and I was like, wait,
it like was incredible. It had, you know, Regina Porter was in there, author of The Travelers. It was our mutual friend Mel. It was Yvonne Cha. It was Tamika Cage Conley, a brilliant writer. It was Monica West, whose book Revival Season is coming out, and I'm so excited about it. That workshop was hugely helpful in sort of looking at content, right? Not just like, I trusted that workshop to talk about content.
I love that.
To do with like identity and race and things like that. And then Margot Livesey, oh my gosh. So Margot is originally from Scotland, I believe, and she has this #2 pencil that she marks papers with, and she was probably the teacher who helped me at the line level, at the sentence level. And especially she helped me a lot with the Nev parts. You know, there was some like historical detail that I was missing. So she helped me hone that and get that right. It was an incredible experience. And I felt like all of my teachers were very invested in this story. And, you know, I got a lovely note from Margot this week, and, you know, tweets and texts from Ayanna, and it's been great. I'm talking with Sugi on this tour. It's been wonderful.
That's how an MFA is supposed to work. You're supposed to see like different styles and skill sets all applied to a work. And that's really, really lovely to hear. Yeah. I also want to talk about, before we end, I want to talk about the title. Was this title with you as you were writing it? Did it come at the end? Was it a group project? How did it happen?
It was sort of a group project. So originally it was just Opal and Nev. No, wait. I'm lying. I forgot about the very first title. So the magazine Sunny works for is called Aural, AURAL, and it was called Oral History, which is a little bit like too clever by half. It's like a little bit too clever. Okay. And so my agent, the wonderful PJ Mark, said, I think it should just be Opal and Nev. So for a long time, we went out on submission, it was just Opal and Nev. And then I was working with Dawn Davis at Simon & Schuster, so wonderful, now making Bon Appetit a better place. She wanted to sort of like kick it up a notch, you know, like noodle on things. And so there was a whole brainstorming project. You know, my husband and I had our notebook and we were sort of just throwing things out. And I don't remember how the final revival of Opal and Nev came to be, but I just loved, this is a weird word to use, but I love the mouthfeel of it for some reason. Like, yeah, right? Like the V's.
Yes, I love that.
Sounds and the rhythm of it. Like it had a rhythm that I really liked. And so that's the one that we decided to go with.
I'm into that a lot because I think there's a lot of like to named book, but there's no final revivals. Again,
Yeah.
I didn't have a final revival. So I think it's a really, really lovely title. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely. And everyone, I'm going to ask her a few more questions. I will not hog her too much. Make sure you're asking your questions in the Q&A below. But I had to ask, it's literally on the top of this postcard. Do you sing? Do you play an instrument? Do you want to do a little number for us? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So obviously you were a music lover through and through.
I do love music. The most I'd ever done was piano lessons when I was about 10. And I am a terribly impatient person. So learning the piano was not really like, I just remember the metronome and just like being so frustrated because I was always like either ahead of or behind the beat. And then I do remember my first big recital, I broke out in the chicken pox, and then that was the end of piano lessons for me.
Final revival.
Yes, of my musical aspirations. But
that is totally fine. Piano's too big. You don't need
but you know, I love music, and I come from a music loving family. My grandparents had, you know, record collections of like jazz vocalists was their thing. And then my parents were in their 20s in the 70s. So very much into soul music, especially conscious soul music. So it was Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder and these songs that had like real meaning and poetry. And then I loved all of that music. And then my curiosity just sort of like led me to other places too. And so, you know, a teenager in the 90s, I really loved alternative rock, indie rock, a lot of the British bands I was really into, but it was really difficult for me because I never saw my reflection in those things. And so part of writing this book was to make up something I had wanted to see in the world. Not that it didn't exist as I'm learning more and more, but I just didn't know about it. You know, it was either erased or marginalized. So creating this figure that would have been known, whose picture I could have pinned up to my wall very proudly, you know, was part of the like driving force behind this book too.
I love that a lot. I feel like usually when I see Black women playing rock guitar, it's these grainy black and white videos that you have to search for really hard on YouTube. And it's just like, well, wait, I know that there's like an in-between place, but I'm really glad that you made up this one for us as well. Music is hard to write about as a journalist, as a fiction writer. I'm curious now at the end of this, what you think is the hardest part about writing about music, writing about a sound that you can't hear on the page.
Gosh, I mean, I think, you know, it was very difficult. Like, I could make up lyrics, you know, and I kind of let the lyrics lead me. And so I started from a place of like, especially with Nev songs, where they were sort of like, you know, kind of funny and witty and clever, and thinking about like, well, what music would match that? Like, that sounds like a jangly guitar to me. That sounds like a certain kind of rhythm and a certain kind of beat. And then thinking about, you know, Opal's state of mind after sort of the climactic moment of this book, the Rivington Showcase, and thinking about her anger, her frustration, and sort of translating that to music. And what does that sound like? That sounds, you know, like, you know, like Virgil calls it, it sounds like a gorgeous noise. It sounds like a racket, you know? And so I kind of was always sort of thinking about the sound in that way, because I certainly don't know music. Like I can't like pull from air, you know, I don't know how musicians do it, you know, creating a melody out of like nothing like that, you know? So kind of let the words and the mood of whatever was happening in the book, either within the characters or sort of externally guide what the sound was.
Right. I love that a lot because that's the kind of music listener I am. I'm always listening to lyrics. And sometimes like when I repeat lyrics to friends, they'll be like, wait, she says that? Oh, wait. Oh, no.
Uh-oh. Where did I go?
Where did you go?
I don't know. Let me start video again. Here I am.
We're back.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
this is not going to happen when you do paperback. Like, you won't leave and come. Like,
I know.
just fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are going to get into some audience questions. And I see some in the chat. I see, oh my God, there's 10 down here. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Calm down. Okay, let's do this. Oh, I love this question from Reggie Bailey.
Hi,
Wants to
Reggie.
know, what is the most interesting, weirdest thing you research that you ended up including in your novel? I love that question. Also, everyone, don't calm down. Keep it up. This is great. I'm excited. Yes. Weirdest, interesting thing.
Weirdest. Well, I'll tell you the most interesting thing was the Battle of Versailles. So the Battle of Versailles is a big fashion show benefit that was put on to sort of restore the Palace of Versailles in France in 1973. And I kind of put Opal like right in the middle of that huge event. And it was kind of like there was a French team and there was an American team of designers, and they sort of like battled it out, right? Using like, you know, their designs, but also their models were like a huge part of this. And so like I got like very granular in the research with that. And Robin Givon, who's a, you know, very acclaimed fashion writer, actually wrote a book about the Battle of Versailles called The Battle of Versailles. And I read that very closely. And then the weirdest thing was probably reading, looking at old Life magazine stories about biker gangs.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I don't
who play a role in the climactic concert. Yeah.
Yes, I do. I mean, I remember it very well. Also, when I lived in Arkansas, there's a big biker festival there. It's called Blues, Bikes, and Barbecue. And something that I thought about a lot was how many Black biker gangs I saw riding around with these huge American flags. I was just like, I need a documentary. Someone, I'll watch it. I'll get inspired one day. I believe one of our mutual friends, Abby West, has a
Abby.
Do you have any modern day celebrity inspo / reference points for Opal and Nev? Great question.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I think about everyone from Santa Gold to Janelle Monáe, to Shingai Shoniwa of the Noisettes, all women who are super eclectic in every sense of the words, you know, stylish and in their music. Yeah.
I saw Santa Gold when I was like 19, and her backup singers had these huge sunglasses on with chains, and like part of their dance moves were just like standing still in weird angles. I just can't stop watching them. So I love that reference.
Yeah.
Let's see. Ooh, I love this one too. You guys are asking a really great question. Danielle Borsiquot, what role did food and drink play in the story? In your writing process, who and what fed these characters? You? I love that. That's a great question.
Ooh. So Opal loves her life in New York, but she misses her mama's food. She misses, you know, what is culturally, you know, Black American food, macaroni and cheese, collard greens. And I was thinking a lot in thinking about the food. I was thinking a lot about the Great Migration and how we're all a little bit Southern, you know. Opal is from Detroit, but her people are from Birmingham. Like that was a route, you know, from Birmingham to Detroit, from Florida to New York was another one. I'm from, you know, which speaks to me because I'm from Florida. Louisiana to LA. These are the routes that Isabel Wilkerson writes about in The Warmth of Other Suns. And so I was thinking about how, you know, culture, Black culture permeates the country and makes us a people, you know? And so I was thinking about her missing those things in this, you know, not just because she's in New York, because of course she, you know, she lives in Harlem, but like being among like all these white people who don't like, you know, they don't eat food like that, you know, like, I don't know what they were eating in at that time, like gelatin based products or something. I don't know.
Don't want to know.
Yeah.
I totally feel you. Wait, I'm drinking a LaCroix right now, which puts me in a workshop space. What was the food that you brought to workshop when you were in workshop?
Oh, I always brought potato chips.
There you go.
Always brought potato chips. You know, the Iowa City is a very cute town. The food.
Food was rough. And listen, like I love Iowa City, but the food was rough. And that was me coming from Arkansas, where the food was like really good. I was like, Iowa.
So I basically lived off kettle chips and like, you know, whatever, if I felt like cooking, you know, it was rough.
Shout out to Noto. Like, I don't want to see like any more sandwiches. Noto like kept me going the entire time.
Well, when I was there, you know, there was like a decent place called the Motley Cow where you could get like maybe a decent restaurant, and then it closed.
It's like, guys, we need you. We need you. There were certain places that I loved when I was there, and then when I got out, I was like, that was not even good. Like I was just depressed.
Listen, and don't try to get any seafood, you know, like
just don't even try.
Just don't.
We love you, Iowa, but your food, the lovely Jay Jones would like to know, what was the most joyous part about writing this book?
Oh, writing Opal and writing the friendship between her and her best friend, Virgil, who is also her stylist, and understanding that she always, you know, she has Virgil as a comrade, basically through all of her career. You know, they bicker sometimes, and but they're always in the same way that Opal and her sister bicker a lot. But, you know, when Opal is at some of her lowest points, like she'll call Pearl for advice, and she might make fun of that advice.
Yes.
But she'll still call her sister, and sort of that those important bonds that we need with other Black people, you know, like when we're in these worlds, knowing that we go to each other to feel restored and rejuvenated, was something that brought me great joy. And I thought about, you know, all of my friends in New York, and, you know, I've had the same circle of friends now for over 20 years, you know, and knowing like, this is my family and these are the people that like I trust, you know. So building those like connections between those characters was full of joy and humor. You know, I think Opal and Virgil are very funny together. You know, I've loved them together.
They kind of remind, obviously, like they reminded me of the best friends in Daisy and the Six, and I thought it was really interesting that there's these really close forever friendships through all of these huge career changes.
Yeah,
sweet.
Yeah.
Miss Lisa Barr has a hot take question, which I'm into. Do you think you could have done this ... completed this book without going to Iowa? Great question.
Ooh. Oh. Maybe. I think it would be a different book. I think it would be rambling. I don't think it would be as good. But that said, I mean, you know, I've always, in my New York life, you know, there are so many writers in the city, and there's, you know, lots of writing community. You know, I would have liked to think that I could, you know, be in different workshops and maybe like get it together.
You would have gotten it together.
Yeah.
I think it would have been a different book. I think that, you know, wherever you go, like Iowa was also a really special place. And I think that it's like strengths would have been different, but
yeah, I think that's true. But yeah, it would have been different.
Yeah. But still you would have. I have lots of faith in you. Okay, Angie Shelton says, in your mind, what is Sunny doing right now? What is her life like in 2021? You know, is she vaccinated? I'm just kidding. She didn't answer.
I think Sunny is probably working on another book. I don't know what it's about though. I think maybe she would like to try another topic, you know? So maybe not music related, but I think she works for herself.
Yes, yes. Okay, I am not the author, but I feel very strongly that she might get into the Olympics ESPN 30 for 30 sector and get
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, she likes like competitive things and like the inner workings.
Yeah, I like that. I could see her maybe like producing or making a documentary, actually. Yeah.
Favorite. That is my
Yeah.
favorite. Okay, I saw it earlier, but I can't remember who asked it. But oh, well, okay. Our very sweet friend Mel Mogoyan wants to know, is Opal an Aquarius or Aries or Leo? I think I know the answer to this.
You know what? Oh my gosh. Oh, wow. So in copy edits, right? Which, copy edits can be very intense.
Mhm.
The copy editor, who was wonderful, name was Polly Watson, I think. She was tracking the characters' ages,
I love
and
that.
they weren't always like adding up, based on 2016. And so, she suggested that I give them birthdays.
It matters though, because then you're like, oh my God, she's a Libra and I had no idea.
Yes,
That makes sense.
exactly. And so when I was thinking about their birthdays, like I was thinking about their signs and what energy that felt like.
Yes.
And so I don't think she's a Libra, Mel.
Oh, I think she's either a Leo or
I think maybe she might have been an Aries. I don't recall. I don't know.
She
I don't
only
remember.
person who needs to know is
It's in my notes somewhere, though. That same copy editor made this amazing appendage that's like an index to the whole novel, like all of the characters, their ages, like details about them. It was amazing.
I love that so much. And I just feel like copy editors have like a special brain, like where only they could do that thing. And I remember in late stages of copy editing, my copy editor, I had this scene in my book where the girls were celebrating and they were like, go Shawnee, it's your birthday. And she was like, this particular Shawnee's birthday was on this date. So this is not good. It's like, oh,
thank you for saving my life. Yes.
Thank you so much. I love that. Okay, I can't remember who asked it, but someone asked, what are you working on now? And is it music related? You do not have to give up too much, but do you think you will revisit the music life in your next work?
So I have a couple very premature ideas kind of kicking around. And really, it's more like I have characters kicking around. I don't know what story they're going to be involved in yet. And the only thing I will say is that it feels like the 90s to me, like it would be like taking place in the 90s, but not music related. Yeah.
The 90s really rich though, with so many things.
Obsessed. Yeah. Sorry, my video keeps going off. There we go.
You were here. That's very, very exciting. Is there anything else that you are working on other than celebrating the publication of your brilliant novel right now?
That is pretty much it, like 24/7. Yeah, and I, for a debut author, I am so blessed. I have had so much support from the writing community, from Bookstagram, Black Bookstagrammers, shout out to y'all. Cause so I've been like talking with a lot of people, doing podcasts, doing, like writing little essays and things like that. And it's just, I'm trying to like sit in this moment and take it all in. And it's been really wonderful. I am looking forward to the time where my head goes a little quieter, and I can like start, teasing something out and seeing what happens. I also started a couple things at Iowa that I think have promise, but I haven't like leaned into them fully yet.
I love pulling things back out because I feel like there's no middle ground. It's either like, this is actually really good, or it's like,
yeah, right. It's like, oh, okay. I was doing a little something right there. That's interesting. Yeah.
Speaking of other writers, I would be remiss to not talk about what you are reading, what you have read, what's on your TBR pile, or what's made an impact for you in the past year. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I already mentioned Monica West Revival Season, which is coming out in May. That was the last book I completed. I'm very excited about that. I am sort of, I've been so busy, but I am savoring Robert Jones Jr.'s The Prophets. I know you talked with him. Yes, yes. Beautiful. I am also reading Zakiya Harris's The Other Black Girl.
Yes, yes, yes,
Which
yes.
I am gripped by. Like, I'm very I'm trying to figure out what's going on. It's like a little bit thriller, a little bit mystery. So I'm excited about that one. And gosh, yeah. But I tell you that I also like nonfiction a lot of times. So I read this incredible book last year called Black Diamond Queens, and I evangelize for this book all the time. It's by Maureen Mann, and it's about Black American women's contribution to rock and roll. And I just inhaled this book and I laughed and I felt teary, and like anyone who is interested in the world of this book of Opal and Nev should definitely pick that one up.
Fantastic. And just because I'm selfishly wanting to know these two, I've asked you about books, but we talked about movies a little bit. Are there any documentaries or movies that you're like, guys, you need to get on this right now? It will inspire you. Anything you've seen?
Well, okay, so the HBO Tina Turner documentary.
I haven't seen it yet. I need to see it. So okay, I watch it tonight.
I mean, it's like we know her story, but to that detail, it's incredibly put together. It's very, very powerful. And like, once you see all these things together, like, it's just like a different context, like near the end, there is footage of her performing a cover of the Beatles' Help, which she does on the Private Dancer album. But once you know all of these things and you're watching it live, it's just like, I almost like broke out into tears. Her story is so like, it's powerful, but also harrowing, but also triumphant. It's like so many things. She went through so much. And, the triumph of her solo career is not only just, the physical abuse that she survived, the spousal abuse, but the fact that even after all that success that she had, like, people were still questioning her, like she's in a Vegas act and they're like, yeah, but do you still have it? Tina Turner.
Yes, exactly. I saw the little like clip of the side of her and her hair and I got the chills, and I have to watch it now. And that is the same kind of power that is honestly in this book. There is so much nuance and warmth, and you can hear these people's voices, you can hear the belting, you can hear the instruments. I just want to say the biggest congratulations to you for this lovely debut, since 2013 in the making. Congratulations, and have the best pub day. Paperback, let's do this again, but next time in person. And thank you everyone to asking such lovely questions. Thank you, Dawnie. This was really
Thank you, Kylie. Thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you. I'm going to welcome Katie back.
Hi, thank you guys so much for that fantastic discussion, and thanks to everyone for joining us. Don't forget to buy your copy of The Final Revival of Opal and Nev in store or online at greenlightbookstore.com. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks, everyone. Bye, Dawnie. Nice to meet you, Katie. See you guys later.
Thank you. Bye.